You're listening to Beyond the Measure, Episode 5. Listen as I, a young composer, and my wife, a young choir director, interview other music educators in order to gain insight into their own success in the classroom. We have a lot to learn, and we want you to learn with us. No matter your age, ensemble, or experience, this is the ideal podcast for music educators, composers, and students alike. So join us as we go beyond the measure. Hey everyone, it's Christian, and I'm here with
Kara.
We are here with one of our, we don't know yet if this is going to be our fourth episode, fifth episode.
Fourth or fifth.
One of those two. And we have a really special guest that we interview in today's episode. Who are we talking to today, Kara?
We are talking to Dr. Bernard Scherr.
Yes, so Dr. Scherr, he was one of my main professors that I studied under at Hardin-Simmons because he was the head director of the composition department at HSU. He's teaching adjunct there now. He just recently stepped down from that position. But I spent 4 years studying under him, and I learned so much from him during the time that I was there. And you're going to hear more about this in the episode, but he has such a wide and deep amount of knowledge in many different areas because he has some experience as a band director, and he got his master's in conducting?
Orchestral conducting. And then also, he's a composer, and he's really, really smart when it comes to music theory. So you're going to get to hear a lot of good stuff in regards to that. Yeah, so a little disclaimer, this episode is a little bit long, but we go over and talk about a lot of really, really good topics. So in the first half, you're going to hear more about Dr. Scherr's story and how he came to be where he is now. And then what else did we talk about? We talked about advice for young composers. So if you have any students that are wanting to compose, this would be a great episode for them to listen to. And in the second half, we talk more about his experience teaching and how he had to recruit for a very small band program his first 6 years of teaching, and how
just to kind of pique your curiosity, he started out with 6 people in his band program, and so you're going to get to hear a little bit more about how he grew that program.
Yeah, and then we also talk about the importance of music literacy and music theory and how to implement that into your classroom. So lots of really good things.
Mm-hmm. So without further ado, here is our interview with Dr. Bernard Scherr. Thank you, Dr. Scherr, for coming on the show with us. You're one of our first guests, and I think about my time at Hardin-Simmons, and honestly, I think you were the very first music faculty member I ever met at HSU.
Really?
Yeah,
Awesome.
Because I toured.
And you still came.
That's right. Yeah, I still came. That's right.
Holy moly!
And so because it was summer. It was the summer before my senior year of high school, so that would have been summer of 2016, and I toured Hardin-Simmons, and I got to meet with you because I already knew I was wanting to do composition, and they said, well, you can meet with a composition faculty member if you want, and I was like, oh well, yeah, I would love to do that. And so after I took my tour, I went and I met with you, and we just got to talk and everything, and my parents were there too, and I remember you said you liked Star Trek, and that won my dad over immediately.
Oh my gosh. Well, what's funny is that right now I am racking my brain trying to remember that. And that's already 6 years ago.
Oh, I know.
Are you serious?
Yeah, 6 years
That's
ago. Because
crazy.
when you mentioned, 2016, so I'm thinking, was I teaching summer school?
Yeah.
And anyway, why was I there that day? But anyway, I'm glad I was.
Well, yeah, for sure. Well, and the other thing that this is just kind of a side thing that I'll just always remember in terms of like my experience at that day at Hardin-Simmons is
when we met in 211 at HSU, room 211, the big room on the second floor.
Right. Yeah.
We met in there, and Brandon Allen and Sam Galloway came in because they heard that there was a prospective composition student, and so they knocked on the door, came in, and they were all excited, and they introduced themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just a really cool feeling of, it's like, oh wow, there are people here that want me. These are nice people. So
well, that's fabulous. Well, of course, those two guys, they're a lot of fun. I mean, I just saw them this week. We're there. Brandon is playing trombone, and Sam is playing French horn in David Richardson's senior composition recital, which is like Friday.
Oh my gosh!
And so I'm playing trumpet in three of his pieces. And so, so, I mean, not only they composition students, but they're like fellow brass students. So I look down the row and there's Brandon. Oh wait, there's Sam. And then I look up and David's conducting.
Yeah,
so there you
that's
go.
very cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I was thinking we need to have, well, I'd like to have both of them on the show at some point, but especially Sam, kind of like you, Kara, he just did his first year teaching as a assistant band director
in Holly, right?
In Holly, yes, and middle school. So that's definitely an experience that would be good for us to to hear about.
Well, I remember whenever I first met you, it was like the week before school started, and it was during like all those theory placements. So you were doing all of like the dictation, and it was I thought it was so hard. I was like, and you had a straight face. You're like playing the piano, and I was like, who is this guy? I was intimidated.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh no, it's just me.
I was just trying to make sure that I didn't scare everybody away.
Well, I think that kind of, maybe, I don't think it was just you, but just music theory in general intimidates a lot of people. And that's probably something we can talk about more in a little bit, which I'll just tell people right now that I don't think music theory intimidates Dr. Bernard Scherr at all, because he is a genius when it comes to music theory. But we'll talk about more about that in a second. But first of all, first just tell us what instrument you play, what kind of ensembles you've been in, and what kind of just musical background you have, and then I want to ask you a little bit more just about your kind of story in general.
Yeah, sure. I'll be brief here and kind of mix this story in with the instruments I play. So I was born and raised in a city called Tulare, California. Like any kid who went to public school, I started in the 4th grade playing those little tonette instruments. They're like little tiny recorders. And then the 5th grade, I wanted to play in band. And so I thought about it, and I had a friend who lived like 3 doors down. He played trumpet, and I thought, oh man, that's a cool instrument. So in the 5th grade, I started playing trumpet in band, and I really loved it. And so then the 6th grade, that's when we would begin middle school, was in the 6th grade in California during the 70s. And so I just started playing trumpet in band and loved it. And then my dad got me an old beat up trumpet. I mean, this thing, I still own it because I can't get rid of it, but it's something that you would see in like a bad pawn shop. You know what I mean? It was horrible. But I started on that. Then finally, we didn't have a lot of money, and I think I was in high school, and my dad, he saw that I was serious about it. He bought me my first Bach trumpet, and man, I loved that thing. So I played it all through high school, and I practiced my butt off, and I just became, just fell in love with music. And so in high school, I played concert band, marching band, jazz band. And my senior year, I got good enough. I was an all-stater. So I was all-state trumpet. My senior year, I'd done a lot of different all-state, honor bands at the county level, city level, and regional. And anyway, so it was really an honor to be at all-state. So then I was kind of a screw-off in high school, so I didn't get as good grades as I really should have. So I decided I couldn't go, and I wasn't going to have the grades to get into the university I wanted to. So what I did is I went to a junior college for 2 years, College of the Sequoias in Visalia, California. And so I thrived. And one of the things that I discovered was that part of being a music major is that, you have to take theory, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody takes theory. And so I got into my theory classes and I just loved it. I couldn't believe how much I loved it.
That makes one of us.
Yeah. So, okay. But I couldn't get enough of it. And so I started writing little tunes because the book at the time had a lot of composition exercises for theory students. And so I just started writing and practicing and studying. I took school very seriously when I got to College of the Sequoias, and I got really, really good grades. So I was able to transfer to the university I wanted to go to, which was UCLA. And so at that time in California, and I don't know if they still do that, but they had a track where if you got really high grades at a junior college level, they wouldn't make you take the SAT or ACT or anything. So because those tests are supposed to say, well, are you going to be successful in college? Well, I was, right? Yeah. So I auditioned at UCLA and I got in. And so then I moved there, and I thought I was going to be a trumpet major at UCLA, but I don't know. It just seemed like I didn't get along that well with my trumpet teacher. And I thought, oh man, I don't know. And then when I get out, making a living as a studio trumpet player in LA, where there's just jillions of them, and you're going to have 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And so I thought, no, get an ed degree. So then I was music ed at UCLA as my undergraduate degree, and I of course I was playing in band and orchestra and wind ensemble and you name it, brass ensemble, blah blah blah. I was doing all kinds of stuff. But then part of being a music major, and you guys know that because you're both conductors. Well, you take conducting. Well, I fell in love with conducting, and I fell in love with orchestral music. And so I got a master's. I stayed there and got a master's degree in orchestral conducting, and master's of fine arts. They've since turned that degree into a doctorate in musical arts. So I kind of kicked myself. I thought, God, if I had just waited it out, I could have got my second DMA. But anyway, or for a DMA. And so anyway, I graduated in '88, and I had a choice to make. So it was either going to starve and pursue, well, basically now I have an ed degree with a master's of fine arts in orchestra conducting. So, but I didn't have a teaching credential. UCLA at the time divided what they did is you can get an education degree in 4 years, and then you could go anywhere in the state of California, either a Cal State system or stay at UCLA or at UC, and they called it your credentialing year. And so that's when you would take all your non-music ed classes. That's when you would do your official student teaching, and then you'd be credentialed at the end of it. So that's how they did it. You remember you were at Hardin-Simmons. It was basically a 5-year degree because they put that all inside everybody's degree. Anyway, so the deal is, I didn't have a public school teacher credential, and I had to make a choice, either starve and try to pursue a conducting career, which would be, extremely difficult, or get married. I had met my wife, Donna. We started dating. We'd been dating for 2 years, and I wanted to get married. So what I did was I said, I'm going to get married, and I'm going to find a job somewhere and support my wife. So I got a job, oddly enough, at my wife's high school. She went to Santa Fe. She went to St. Paul High School in Santa Fe Springs, California, and that was my first job. Was their band director, right out of college. So I go there, and it's a little tiny band. It was so hapless. I felt so bad for those kids. I created a band camp that summer as after I got hired, and I beat down the doors trying to get kids. But I'll never forget this. My very first rehearsal during my band camp, I had 6 students. Wow. 6 students, and I was petrified because I had to put together some type of marching band show in like 3 weeks, right? Oh my goodness. Yeah, so my heart sank.
Were you by yourself?
I was by myself. No assistance. No nothing. And so I was able to corral a bunch of kids, and I think we had about 22 musicians by our very first halftime show at the football game, that very first home game. We had about 22 musicians. We had about maybe 1 or 2 pit mallets, and then we had a little tiny, what they call a drill team, which was color guard. So we managed to put together, we muddled through, and by golly, the kids had a great time, and I had a great time. And sure enough, I was there for 6 years, but all that time there, I was composing. I would come home at night, I would compose pieces for whatever, or make arrangements. I was a big arranger while I was there, arranging all the time for my kids. So I was arranging. So anyway, what I did is I thought, I want to go back to school and pursue a doctorate in comp theory. So I called up my old teachers at UCLA and I said, well, what do you think? And they says, yeah, of course. I mean, you're a composer now. That's what you do. You're arranging, you're composing. And but they said, you know this place. Go somewhere else and get it all at different perspectives. So I did. That was the best advice, because then I looked around at different schools. I applied to various across the country, was interviewed at some prestigious schools, but didn't get in. I did get in, though, at University of Oregon, and it was the best thing ever because Oregon had fantastic teachers, a wonderful, supportive climate of supporting new music. It was just amazing, and I learned a lot, and they also had great theory teachers. So it took 4 years to get the doctorate there. I was teaching theory as a grad student, and then I graduated and I was hired as an adjunct there as well. So I was teaching comp theory and adjuncting at Oregon for 2 years. And then during that second year, I applied for Hardin-Simmons, and that's when I got hired in 2000 at Hardin-Simmons. And so the rest is history. So I had been there, and by the time you got there in 2016, I had already been there 16 years. And so that's my background. And I took over for Andy Patterson Sr. He had been there for 40 years. Wow. Yeah, he was had a huge, wonderful reputation. And so it was an honor to continue his program and make adjustments as I deemed necessary. So anyway, that's kind of my history, how I got to Hardin-Simmons. So I still play trumpet. I dabble in piano because I teach theory, and I sing, as you know. I sing
tenor,
and then I of course compose tons of music, and but I do other stuff as well because Oregon had such a broad curriculum. I also took a year of electronic music, and so, that's what I do. A lot of stuff I do now. So I'm a professional recording, live streaming, music technology, consulting. What else do I do? I now teach adjunct at Hardin-Simmons. I teach adjunct at McMurry. I'm partnered with my wife in B&D Music Services, and of course I play in the Key City Brass Quintet, and so I'm always bouncing around. In fact, right before this interview, I had just finished editing in Pro Tools a concert that I recorded just a couple days ago, and so I delivered that to a client. Well, when I say delivered it to a client, I uploaded it to the cloud and they'll download it. And once they're downloaded, it's delivered. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm doing. And next week, let's see, I do a recording of a jazz band on Monday, live stream of choirs on Tuesday. I do a rehearsal on Wednesday where I play trumpet. Thursday, I'm live streaming ACU's bands. Friday, I'm playing in a recital. Sunday, live streaming a chamber music concert. And so it's boom, boom,
kind of busy.
boom. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's that. I'm pretty much going all the time.
Yeah. Well, part of the reason we wanted to have you on here was, and I think you just kind of showed everyone why, is that you have a really wide variety of experiences. And I think it's one of the things we're wanting to really do here on the show is we want to kind of emphasize the importance of like the relationship between composers and music educators. And it kind of works out for us since Kara's a choir director and I'm a composer and we're married. So that works out pretty good. But especially, having the perspective from someone like you, who is both a really, heavy, compose a lot of music, but you've also taught a lot of stuff as well. So it's just really cool to be able to have those kind of perspectives. One thing a question I just kind of thought of was, as a composer, do you think you would have, so you said, you didn't want to starve, so you went into, the teaching field and everything. Right. Do you think as a composer, how beneficial was it to become a teacher of music as a composer? Like, how beneficial was that to you for your writing?
Since you had to arrange a lot for your students.
It was fabulous. I couldn't recommend it more. I think not. It's because, well, when you're preparing to be a teacher, you're already learning so many of the social skills you need to do to work with performing musicians, and in this case, as a teacher, young ones. And so what ends up happening is that you're listening and to their skill levels, and you're learning how to craft music that strikes a balance between music that challenges, yet music that doesn't discourage, right? Now, and that's a very difficult balance to achieve unless you've spent time in the classroom in front of students. Because, somebody could be trained at elite conservatories and go straight through, live in New York City, and work with only the best musicians their whole life. Okay, great. That's awesome and good for you. But you eventually are going to want to work, or for the rest of us, you're going to work with musicians of all levels, even beginners, like who have never even touched an instrument, or sung a piece of music. And so they're musicians too, even at the very beginning. And we should never forget that they're just beginning to go and delve into that, and they're just learning to love it. And so to write music that engages them and pulls them into music and performance, to be able to write that is wonderful, and knowing how to do that. So I would always recommend that for anyone who studies music, or even young composers. I would recommend go out there and see if you could write a little piece of music for your band or your choir. See it and ask your teacher about it. And then ask your teacher, will this work? Will this work? What do you think? You know, can we do this? And as you know, you both know, when you got to college, how many pieces did you have performed by your college choir?
By the choir,
Yeah.
I had 3. I was blessed enough to have 3, but then I also had, let's see, I had another, you know, like solo piece done by a couple, you know, viola and piano, and they actually commissioned it from me.
Yeah.
It was just a little arrangement of Silent Night, but that was a really good experience. I had another friend commission an arrangement of a solo vocal arrangement of a song she wanted to do, and then even after I graduated, some friends that are still in college, you know, David Richardson actually, he commissioned a trumpet piece for me that he did at his trumpet recital a couple months ago. So that's been huge for me. And I was gonna say, like, I can really relate and completely agree with what you're saying about that, because, you know, I just spent 4 years in college really working on just, you know, writing more music and learning the ins and outs of that and my own voice and my process and everything. But now that's what I'm really having to start, you know, working on, is making music that is exactly what you just said, accessible to students that are at, you know, all different grade levels, but still, you know, fun and engaging, as you said. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this podcast to begin with, for me personally, is to learn more about that, because I haven't taught yet, you know, and I'm sure I will at some point, or there's a good chance I will. I haven't thought that far ahead, but I know for a fact that would be really beneficial to me. And like I said, it kind of works out. It's already been really helpful for me to watch the little bit that I've seen Kara do with her classes and everything, and from talking to other directors in town, it's already given me so much insight into that. So, yeah.
Awesome. It is. And I just want to tell the audience, in fact, you're going to get a performance of an arrangement you did for the Lone Star State Trumpet Guild. You're going to get that in San Antonio. Did you know that? We're going to do your arrangement of La Prairie at the International Trumpet Guild Conference in San Antonio.
Really? You know, my gosh.
Cool. So we're going to go down there. We're going to play arrangement. Yeah. So
wow, I didn't even know.
That's you didn't know?
No.
Oh, dude. Okay. Well, now you know.
Oh, sweet. Well, when is that? When is that happening?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay. Let me rack my brain. The ITG conference is in the first week of June. I think the performance is Thursday, June 3rd. But don't quote me, but it's right around there. I think I'd have to go back and check my emails. But yeah, we're gonna perform it there.
Oh, sweet. Well,
maybe we can do a little road trip.
Go down there. Is it at the Henry B. Gonzalez Center, or is it?
No. Let's see. It's at the Hyatt Regency.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So it's a great big hotel that we all go to.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. Oh, that's awesome. That's great to hear.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. Well, yeah, it was fun doing that, and that was a good learning process for me, because I had never done like a
revoicing type of thing.
I'd never really done that type of arrangement before. Yeah, and especially brass in general, I'm just not super. That's still, I feel like my least. I have the least experience in that area, so that's awesome. Well, cool.
Yeah,
I'm excited. Thanks. That's awesome.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So, you know, if I was to recommend then for also, let's say you're a high school, composer, and you've written pieces for your high school band or choir or orchestra. I would recommend that what they do in terms of preparation, if they're serious about being a music major, I would say, develop really good habits of practicing and listening. Because one of the things that what happens is that when you go to college, you start becoming a music major, you're going to be pulled in a lot of different directions. I mean, you're going to want to be in a lot of different groups, and then there's social groups, and then there's other classes, and it just goes on and on and on. Then you're at home in a dorm, and people are loud and goofing around, and it's really easy to kind of develop bad habits and slack off. And so what I would recommend is that just practice right now. Develop your musicianship. Find a music teacher. Find a composition teacher. And just get to work. And then when you go to college, keep up that work ethic. But also, too, I would say if you do get a degree in composition, just realize it's going to be difficult to like, you don't just walk out and become a composer and the next thing you know, you're writing the next great film score to, Spielberg's next blockbuster. It just doesn't happen, and so it just takes work and dedication, and you have to have a ton of varied skills. I mean, I look at you. We're recording this interview on a digital interface that's plugged into your computer, and we got these 3 mics. You had to set it all up yourself. You had to figure out what to buy. You have to know how to use a DAW, and then of course and you also compose and arrange in addition to working as a recruiter at a university. And so and I look at Kara. Kara, you're what? You're a middle school teacher or elementary?
Middle school and high school.
Yeah, middle school and high school. Plus, you're still singing, right? Okay, and so you're still singing, and it's just like being that one person where all you do is one thing. And unless you're like a world-class artist, and maybe there'll be a world-class artist out there listening to this. Unless you're that type of person, having only one thing, you better be really good at it. I mean, really, really, really good at it, and actually catch some lucky breaks. But everyone else, you just got to buckle down, and you just got to be diverse and just have a wide-ranging skill set. That's what I'd recommend.
And I think a lot of times being diverse about the skill sets actually
it like helps you more, like even for like jobs, showing that you have all that experience and stuff helps you, put yourself out there a little more.
Yeah, exactly. Plus it also helps each of the individual skills.
Yeah.
So like, learning a diverse amount of skills increases each of them individually,
Oh yeah. Like when I was studying conducting, when I was a conducting student at UCLA, all I did was study and listen to orchestral scores, right? So, I mean, I just immersed us. And what happens? That's where I learned how to score for orchestra.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's like literally learning my conducting lessons were literally also orchestral scoring lessons, and then when I studied theory, well, that now you're learning the nuts and bolts of music. And so when you write a melody, hey, you know how to harmonize it. Hey, you know what a cadence is, and you know where to put a cadence, and you know how to construct phrases and score these for various ensembles and so on and so on. So theory was connected to composition, conducting was connected to composition, ear training. Oh my goodness. You have to be able to dictate your own music and as a conductor, and when you're on the stand, I mean, Kara, you have to have ears to be able to help your choir sing better, and so it's all integrated and everything cross fertilizes and intersects, and so it's wonderful.
Yeah, I actually wanted to go back to your first 6 years of teaching at that small school, because I'm kind of in the same boat. I teach at a really small district and a pretty small program, and I kind of want to know, like, how did you make it grow? Because you said you started with 22. Did you see your program grow within those 6 years?
Yes, I did. I sure did. So my first band, I got that first year, starting from just 6 players in the 6 players in that first day of band camp. Now, eventually, obviously, I got on the phone. All right. So I said, I got those 6 kids. I said, okay, guys, who are the names of the students that were in band last year who didn't come today, who you think will still be in band? And I got their names. I went over to the administrative office. I got their home phone numbers, and I got on the phone. And I just beat down the doors. Hey, this is Mr. Scherr. I'm your new band teacher. We would really like to have you in band. This is a personal invite. And I'd talk to the kid. I'd talk to the parent. And I'd say, come back to band. Come back to band. And so I did a lot of cold calls the first week, and I stuck with it. I had to be flexible that first year. Kids. This is back in the 90s, so it's not nearly as bad then as it was now. But kids got a lot of interests, and they're just feeling you out. So if I was real rigid and I say you have to be in band and you can't be in any other thing, I would have lost kids. Yeah. So I had to be flexible. So not only did I beat down the doors, but kids said, well, I kind of want to be in softball, or I kind of want to be in this. And I said, well, see what you could do. Maybe you could come to band 3 days a week, or and just do it on the off season or whatever. I was bending over backwards to help kids navigate all their different interests and just try to build it up. Over 6 years. So here's what happened at St. Paul. When I first got there at St. Paul, they had a student enrollment of about 1,250 students. And this is a private Catholic school. And then through various economic, social reasons, over the next 6 years, they dropped to about 960.
Okay, so the whole school did.
Yeah, the whole school dropped that. But in that time, my first band with I think I ended up that May with 25 students in that very first band. But by after 6 years, even despite the school basically dropping 25% of enrollment, I was able to gain, my last band had 44 students.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was able to maintain, even though the enrollment was dropping, I was able to maintain and grow a band up to 44. But it was brutal work. I mean, it was a lot of flexibility, a lot of calls, and just trying to retain. If you got a student interested in band, just keep that student interested in band. And so you're at a public school, so I don't know what the rules are in terms of like cold calls, recruiting on campus. What's it like there?
Well, for basic recruiting, usually we would go to either, if I'm recruiting for junior high now, since I work at junior high and high school, my recruiting, I don't have to do much recruiting at the junior high because all the students that I have in choir, hopefully they would just transfer to choir in high school and I would still have them.
Yeah.
But as far as like going to the elementary school, I would take like my high school group and sing in front of them and kind of tell them about choir. But yeah, I mean, this is my first year doing it, so I'm going to be doing recruiting here soon we just had some 5th graders tour on Tuesday, and so they came to the room and told them like a 5-minute brief thing about choir, and then my kids sang for them, and that was it. But Clyde is a very, very small district, and I have a lot of students who are involved in lots of sports, and so I've had so many conflictions, even with my own concerts, having like, I have a baseball tournament that night, I can't come, and it's like you can't say no because it's baseball, and so it's hard, and yeah, you do have to be flexible with that. Now, I don't know for like other bigger public schools, like Abilene down the road. I really don't know how they do it, but that's kind of how recruitment goes.
Well, there are some teachers. I have a philosophy where it's all or nothing. So, they would force students to say, okay, well, you just can't sing in choir anymore then. Mm-hmm. Good luck. Enjoy baseball. And there are big districts, and I would bet money that if you look at, if you were to go to like the 5 or 6A, what do they call it? The UIL state championships, and let's say marching band or whatever. If you were to look at some of those schools that have those amazing programs, I don't know if you've seen them, but they have these amazing field show tournaments. They look like professional drum and bugle corps. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those band directors say, hey, I don't want to hear it. I got 5 other kids waiting for that spot. So you go out and you do something else. I don't care. But for me, I've never been one to really be into that because number one, for me, being in band, choir, orchestra, it's about the music and not so much about a lot of the other things that go with it. So number one, it's about the music. If you got a student interested in music, no matter what degree, meet that student where they're at and work with them where they can and develop their musical skills, because you know what, that kid who loves baseball may turn around and be walking out there and on that major league field someday. You never know, out there playing ball. But guess what? They love to sing, and they're like, maybe they go to church, they're in a church choir, and stuff like that. So you just never know. You're sparking lifelong learning.
Yeah. And it's very cool. Whenever we've gone to football games, either at Clyde, and I think we've gone to, I don't know, but seeing whenever the choir sings the national anthem, and you see all of the cheerleaders come sing with them, and some of the football players come and join.
It's wonderful to see that, right?
That's what brings students in. So if you're telling it that it's all or nothing, that's going to just push them away.
Oh, yeah.
Agreed.
For sure.
Agreed.
Well, I wonder, Kara, do you think for right now, as far as something like cold calling, like calling individual parents, do you think that's still something you'd be allowed to do? I don't know if things have changed.
I
don't
can't
know
imagine.
how
I don't know, because I wouldn't have if there are people in my choir that I know already, I think that'd be okay. But if it's people that I'm not familiar with or don't know, how would I get that information?
Yeah.
That's the thing, because I only have the information of my students, like contact information. But all I can do is really send out mass emails, if that's what I'm going to call cold calling.
Right.
Mass emails saying, hey, come join choir. If I did an interest meeting, things like that.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes what happens is that I remember at St. Paul, there would be like a day where it wasn't really a night, where all the students of the area, Catholic elementary schools, because they didn't have really middle schools. It's K through 8, right, for a private Catholic school. So they would have a night at St. Paul where, they would open it up. So I would get to address parents and students of all the parents and students who came that night who are interested in sending their students to St. Paul. So I would get to meet them in that regard. And so that kind of saved time, because now you got already the parents and the students there, and you could give them a brochure. This was old school, right? We're talking, in the 90s, right? I left, I started working at St. Paul in the fall of 88. That's how long ago that is. And so we're talking no internet, no anything. So, and so anyway, I got a chance. I don't know if there's like ever an open house at Clyde where you could actually see and greet. And
we do now. It's already, whenever we have our open house, it's already when school's, it's like 2 weeks after school's already started, And it's like, I can't really promote to join choir because they already have their schedules all. And that's not just Clyde. I've noticed that with a lot of high schools, they have their open house with all these clubs, and it's usually promotion for clubs that meet out like after school.
Right.
So if I had like an after school choir that I had, I would promote that, but I don't have any schools that meet choirs that meet after school.
I feel like at my school it was kind of that same way. Like we used those opportunities. It was more for like fundraising stuff. Like maybe we were like selling some choir themed shirt or something, and then we would use that time to like try to fundraise. But yeah, it'd be nice if there was an earlier thing. But I will say that something that I've definitely learned as an admissions counselor at HSU is all about the importance of that one-on-one personal attention and connection to students. You know, that's, I mean, to show them that they're not just a number, but that they're a name, and that you want to personally know them, and you want them to have an experience where they're going to be known. Right. That's going to be the most important thing for them to hear and to experience. And maybe even if you can't, you know, call people, you know, cold call, you know, students, you know, which honestly, now that I think about it, it would almost be easier to cold call nowadays since more students have their own phones, but also that might be kind of weird. I don't know.
Well, see, that what it does is it kind of crosses a weird line, and all of a sudden it becomes creepy, you know, nowadays, you know. How'd you get my number, you know?
Sure. But with that being said, I think that also raises the importance of forming those personal relationships with your students that you currently have. Yeah. Because they're going to experience that, and then they're going to tell their friends about it.
And that's exactly what happened. Going through my fall and spring semester, I had at the junior high maybe 10 to 15 more students join in the spring than I had in the fall, and then I had maybe 10 other students at the high school that joined because their friends told them, "Hey, choir's fun, yada yada yada." And sometimes that's been good. Sometimes I've had some students that join, and I'm like, maybe you shouldn't have joined. I think it's kind of a joke, you know, but it's fine.
Let's see. Okay, well, I was wanting to ask, still in terms of, you know, teachers in school and everything. So obviously you've done really well, you know, at the college level, you know, building and maintaining a theory program. I mean, I know you're just teaching adjunct at Hardin-Simmons now, but you know, when I was there and you were full time, I mean, you had really solidified. You know, you had the theory side of things, you had the ear training, you had the keyboard, and you did really good at having all of that work together. Now, obviously, that's in the context of a college, you know, higher level education where, you know, students have the ability to have more focus on each of those as a music major and throughout the week. But, you know, for teachers that are, you know, in middle school and high school, or even elementary, that are obviously, first of all, don't get nearly enough time. I mean, a tiny fraction of that, you know, because
I've found it's very difficult for me to implement that, like how to properly sing, B, the basics of music theory, and then C, also learning all of the music for concerts that we have. And sometimes you have to implement the theory into the music that they're learning. But sometimes you need like a full-on lesson on things, and that's been hard for me to just the balance between teaching basic theory in class.
Oh, I can imagine it is tough. And but it's fun because I remember, I mean, all these things we discuss in theory pedagogy, and so and so it's wonderful because these issues, one of the things that we talk about is, okay, in a normal classroom setting, how would you integrate theory into a rehearsal of any type? In fact, it's kind of funny you brought this up. So, you know, I taught undergraduates and graduate students in composition and theory at Hardin-Simmons for over 20 years. And I just graduated my final master's student just submitted his thesis and passed his orals just this week, Cody Hutchison. And oh my goodness, what a great student. And you know Cody. You guys know Cody. Awesome. I mean, we can't speak highly enough of him. So he is going to be the new band director at Cisco College right down the street.
I
mean,
I didn't know that.
Wow, he awesome. Well, he's been there as an assistant, but now
he's taking on the head now.
Yes, he's going to take on the head. So
very cool.
So Cody's done this, but what's brilliant about this situation is that Cisco is going to start an associate's degree in music. And Cody is the first guy to create the foundation of the theory core for this degree. And so he is like the guy. And so for his test, what I did is, knowing that, see, he's already teaching music theory now, first year. He's going to be teaching second year. So on his exam, I gave him, the questions were, please construct a 1-year curriculum outline for a music theory core curriculum, theory and ear training. And then the second question was, list some ways in which you would integrate theoretical topics within a concert band rehearsal. And I put this in the context of a 2-year college in the state of Texas. I said, how are you going to do it? And his answers were wonderful, because he was able to like take his syllabi from his courses and adjust them and submit them and show them to the committee. Say, hey, I'm doing this very thing. This is how I laid out my curriculum. These are the texts I use. These are when I test. And it was just all laid out. And then for his rehearsal, he just listed the things that he's learned and he does in his rehearsal techniques or whatever, and the things that he does to integrate these topics. And so, I was really proud, because Cody isn't necessarily the first student to do this. I've had other students in the past who were either undergraduate or graduate who went on to teach at public schools or private schools. And so this process of learning how to integrate them in the classroom at whatever level has been really beneficial to the students. And so I was pleased with that. And of course, I'm really glad that you're doing it. I know how hard it is, because I remember walking in those shoes, and then and a student, right, so they have to play a major triad and they're just not hearing it. There's something's out of tune. And so you go, okay, what you're doing is, this is a major triad. This is what it sounds like. These are the pitches that you're going to, as you play, that you're going to hear. You want to hear these tones so that you, as you go from interval to interval, that you are in the center of the pitch, so that we could all play in tune, because we all have to tune this chord and we all have a part of it, and all of us have to work together to make sure that it sounds pleasing. And so talking through these things, listening is so important. And I honestly, I don't think students mind learning that. I would bet money that how do they respond? Okay, I don't want to color this. How do they respond when you do get an opportunity to explain something, the music theory behind it?
They ask so many questions, and they're good. They're good questions. Whenever I was first talking to them about key signatures, and like how they're sharps and flats, they asked, I thought this was a really good question with my 6th graders who are just brand new to all of this. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a good question. Like, will you ever see sharps and flats in the same key, like intertwined within a key signature? And I'm like, no, sharps are with each other and flats are with each other. Right. But you're not ever going to see them together. Now you can see key changes within a song, but you're not going. But I just, that's a really good question to ask. It's like such a young beginner, and they ask those type of questions, and they seem really interested, which that's exciting to me. That it is. They're not just excited to sing. They're excited to learn more about what music it really is.
Yeah, no, that's great. Wow, there you go. A 6th grader.
Yeah.
Yay for the 6th grader.
I have one student, and he's just extremely smart, and I think he's going to stay in choir, or he's going to stay in music for a long time. He just asks so many questions. he's like a genius, I feel like.
Well, there you
he's
go.
A young Dr. Scherr.
Feed the genius. Yeah. Keep going. It's like go. Yeah.
Well, just so that, assuming that a lot of our listeners are, teachers in most likely, middle high school positions. I'm just going to assume we're so early on, but I'm going to assume that's going to be most of our audience here, to kind of, just so that we can kind of give them more of a clear outline on maybe, just advice that they can have as far as, they're in those positions where they don't have a lot of time. As we, just said, one of the techniques you just described was integration, was, integrating music theory within the rehearsal, even if it just means taking like 2 minutes, 3 minutes to explain one little thing. Yeah. Well, first of all, what are just some examples of what that would look like? I know you kind of already.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you one example of where in music, and they see a little fermata sign on the top. That doesn't take too long to teach.
Yeah.
They just say, okay, everybody point to
Symbols.
the little the thing that looks like a bird's eye on top of the note. Is everybody pointing at it? And then I write on the board, like, that is called a fermata. Everybody say fermata, and they repeat it back to you. And then you just say, that is whenever, you hold a note out as basically as long as I want for you to hold it. And you're just going to look at me, and then I will tell you when to stop. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's just like a small thing that doesn't take too much time to.
And another thing, and I don't know if you do this, but I know that Dr. D. Romines, who we're going to have on the show as well, we probably already had him as an earlier episode, but he is always really good at when he does stuff like that, even in, choir at HSU and colleges. Take the fermata, for example, he'll have us write down fermata, just using as an example, like, write the word fermata above it. I specifically remember the hemiola. That's one of the little more advanced, the terms, but I always remember writing hemiola on top of where there was a hemiola in the music, and he just briefly explained it. And now I'm always going to remember what that is because of...
Or voice exchange.
Exactly. Voice exchanges, stuff like that. So that's really cool. Well, are there any other examples or just techniques in general that you can think of?
Well, I mean, purely notational things. I think every teacher should work on music literacy, and because of how important it is, and I have to admit, there are lots of musicians out there who are famous, who picked up a guitar, started learning guitar themselves, and they started to play. They just picked up to sing by copying singing on a radio. Next thing you know, they're plucking out tunes. They put a set together. Now they're in clubs and so on and so forth, and they become famous, and they never learn how to read music. Well, the thing about it is, one of the things school is about is literacy. And so as music teachers, music literacy for us is every bit as important as being able to read or do math. So the thing about literacy, though, what's the beauty of it is that's the door to music theory, because now you learn a staff, and you learn what clefs are, and you learn how clefs operate, and how those same 5 lines could be different notes, actually, and lines and spaces can be different notes. So then you're learning how to navigate, and then you learn, well, the staff, what were those? There's just 5 lines, but what's so special about those lines? What do those distances between the lines mean? And so I think another thing would be to take the staff and show what the staff looks like, just in general, how it maps onto motions on a piano.
Yeah.
Right? Up the staff means you move to the right, down to the left. And what does this mean that they could do that? So the staff is good, the reading clefs are good, and of course duration values are phenomenal. Students love rhythm, and everybody loves to move and tap and get into the music. So the whole concept of rhythms and durations and how those translate to then what you see and how you count. And so all those things, all those fundamental things are integrated in just the durations. meter signatures, and then you move to notes one right after another, up or down, becomes scales, and what are those distances? And people could think of a song, The Sound of Music, do re mi fa sol la ti do, and you could sing on solfege a major scale, and then once it's in your ear, well then, hey, what does it look like on a page? What does it look like if it's just a little higher on the staff, and what do you got to adjust, and that's a key signature, and blah, and it just goes on and on and on. And so I think music literacy is the door to theory. Also, to the last, one of the little quips I have is I like to point to the piano, and I like to say, hey, this is the giant theory machine.
Yeah.
Remember that, the theory machine. And it is so true, because it was constructed going all the way back, the earliest keyboards, were constructed thinking of scales back into the Middle Ages. And so, just the concepts of writing scales and translating that into what it looks like on a keyboard is huge. And a little kid could go up to the piano and touch a note, and that's a note. It's like, hey, go from one to the next. And so
I have a lot of students, like during we have like little breaks in between our sight reading, and then whenever we start rehearsal, they'll ask like if they could play the piano, and they'll pull up something on their phone, like it's like those MIDI files, and then it has the piano on the bottom.
Right.
I could play this.
Exactly. And they love it, right?
Of course, it's ear training as well.
Exactly. Because now they got to match what they play. And if it doesn't match, I played a wrong note. Which one do I do to fix it?
To go higher or lower.
Exactly. I mean, think about all the cognitive skills that go into that they're learning. And it's just wonderful. So I'm glad they're doing that.
I also want to just give a shout out to all the elementary music teachers out there. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but like for me, I specifically remember learning those beginning like note durations and rhythms and what is the staff in elementary music class. And I mean that was a good while ago now. I don't know if it's any different now or what I'm assuming they still focus on those kind of things, but like that really shows the importance of first of all having those relationships with the elementary music teachers and the work that they do, because it's, I don't know about y'all, but like for me, like there are times where like I'll admit like I forget like how much work that they do and how important
they're the founders.
Yes. They are the founders. Yeah. So for admirable here. It's just because. So just this week, like I said, I streamed this big fancy concert at the Abilene Civic Center. So you got the ACU Wind Ensemble performing with the Civic Orchestra of Abilene, and they brought in a really famous composer who, forgive me, the name escapes me.
It was Stephen Bryant.
Stephen Bryant, yes, thank you. And so they brought him in, and there was this big thing, and they played beautifully. And I thought to myself, these are college students, and then the Civic Orchestra had all folks my age, quite frankly, and integrated with the students, and all of that would not have been possible if years ago they started in that elementary school classroom. I mean, that's where it started. And so you have this beautiful, wonderful musical event. They sounded great. It sounds like professionals in many instances. And none of that would have happened without those elementary school teachers and middle school teachers and high school teachers all laying the groundwork year after year after year. And so, but no one said, you don't say that, hey, for this tonight's concert was made possible by all those awesome teachers out there. You know what I mean? You just don't do that, but maybe you should someday.
Well, so I'm thinking, so obviously we've just discussed there are a lot of different aspects of, obviously there are so many different aspects of music theory, and you can get into so many different specific categories and everything. I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of, you know, some, you know, music teachers, you know, kind of like, you know, you, Kara, and I'm thinking, okay, if I want to start integrating, you know, I want to start integrating music theory into my curriculum, and and some schools are able, I should have mentioned this too. I was lucky enough to be in a district that had separate music theory classes in high school.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like AP music theory.
Yes. I was one of the really lucky ones. I know that's not the case for most places, but so with that being said, any teachers that don't have that luxury and they're thinking, okay, I want to integrate music theory, but there's so much, you know, there's so many different things that I could, you know, focus on, and I'm kind of getting overwhelmed on what, you know, I think it'd be easiest to boil it down to, you know, if there were just 3 or 4, just a few different key aspects that you think is the most important things that you could at least start with, just as a starting point that students need to at least be able to start hearing and learning. What would you feel like those
very
are?
Good. Number one, like I said earlier, all the theory elements that are just simply in music literacy, you know, durational values, key signatures, different clefs. Get folks outside of their comfort zone of, you know, band or band. It's usually they just play one clef. Get them outside of that comfort zone. Have a dry erase board up there in your band rehearsal or your choir rehearsal with a staff on it. And be quick about it. If there's something that you could integrate, get it up on that staff, show people, and have them do it.
Visuals.
Yes, visuals are extremely important. Number 2, I would say, is that it's your warm up. When you you start off at the beginning of class on a warm up. So here's what you do: you integrate elements from the piece, your rehearsal that day, into your warm-up. And what you do then is you show them, okay, everybody, let's take a look at this rhythm. Ta, 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 ta. Okay, everybody, let's, here's what it looks like. Even if, and because there will be some students who don't actually play or sing that particular rhythm or whether. This is how you do it. This is how you count it. Let's do this. Okay, let's now sing a major scale or play a major scale, this particular scale after you've explained all this on this rhythm. Okay, everybody. So your warm-up is the place where you could do that. If you'd have chorales, well, have them, instead of playing it, teach them major solfege and have them sing it. You know, there's no reason why band kids shouldn't be singing their tails off every rehearsal. A band kid should be singing. So perhaps that's number 3. So number 1 was the notation. Number 2 was have that dry erase board with visuals to anything. And number 3, or number 2 also is during warm-ups, integrate theoretical concepts. And finally 3, all throughout the rehearsal, you can have your students sing their parts. Just flat out sing the parts. And for choir kids, of course, they're already singing. Well, get out of the text. Sing it on solfege.
Yeah.
You know,
play the parts.
And sometimes even taking out the solfege and just singing on a neutral syllable, that helps too.
Yeah. I was going to say, for the vocalists, have them play the parts.
Oh, yeah.
Just the reverse too. It's all about bridging. There are so many different connections between between the skills and everything. And also going back to the warm-ups thing, I was wanting to mention that, and I don't know, maybe music ed majors, this is more of a normal thing that they already kind of know, but like it wasn't until like, I don't know, maybe a year or 2 years ago that it finally clicked and I realized, oh, maybe the warm-ups aren't just for, you know, like literally warming up your voice. Maybe
it's warming you up for later.
It's warming up your brain.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
It's not a physical. Maybe it's more of a mental thing.
And if there's one thing I think, though, that teachers always need to do is that they need to voice the thought processes behind things, like something, and I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but the idea behind it is, I know I do this in theory is I say every now and then, hey, what I just did was this type of modeling exercise that you're going to do in the classroom. I don't know if you remember anything where I would say that I just modeled for you blank, or these are the thought processes behind this, and this. And this is what I'm thinking, and you should help your students think. And so verbalize your thought processes so that then they could understand that and then integrate that into their own thinking.
It's so, I feel like it's so easy to just teach the stuff and then realize, you give them the different, it's like looking at a map. Like you can look at where all the different cities are on a map, but you don't have any of the roads.
How do you
map
get
of the
there?
Roads in between them. How do you get from one to? There could be a huge, river in between, and you don't know that you're gonna have to,
right, exactly.
So you have to go around, So that's really cool. That's awesome.
Right.
I feel like there was something else I was gonna say, but other thing, another random little thing that I observed from being in choir with Dr. Romines that I thought was also a really good little integration technique was. And Dr. Wright, who was the choir director here a few years ago, is they would always, instead of saying when calling out a piece of music that we're going to sing, instead of calling it by the title, he would call it by the composer. So it forced you to remember the composer.
Yeah.
So if they said, pull out the Duraflay, it's like, okay, well, which, it's like maybe I can't remember which, but then you remember the composer, and then Dr. Romines is also really good at. He always gives us like 3 or 4 facts,
points that we need to write down
about the composer and their dates. And it's like, man, simple little things like that. Like that's not hard to do for middle and high school.
Especially at the beginning, like handing out that piece of music. You're not entirely ready to start like rehearsing yet, but just playing it for them and be like, hey, this is some facts about it.
It starts getting into music history.
Yeah. Oh, you betcha.
So,
you betcha.
Cool.
Yeah. So, I hope the music teachers out there, I hope they're encouraged, to build them up. This is I'm a college professor, and I even taught graduate students, and I even over the years have helped my colleagues get their doctorate degrees as they were teaching, and somebody who's lived in that world, I just want to reiterate to the first year teacher out there at a middle school or an elementary school in the middle of West Texas, that man, they're just doing the Lord's work, and those kids, they need those musical experiences every bit as much as a student at a big school in the Metroplex. And so those very first steps for those kids are so important. I mean, because look at, we all love music, and where did we first learn to fall in love with it? When we're little kids in school. And there's some people, you read about their stories about famous composers who in their home, their mom or dad would play like records. And so in many ways, I was that way too. I mean, I remember being a small kid or early on, and my dad, he had a musical background, even though he was a school teacher. And I remember him playing Beethoven LPs. And so I grew up hearing, it was back in 1976. So that, as you can imagine, that was a long time ago. 1976 was the 200th anniversary of Beethoven's birth. Or no, it was 1970. It was in the 70s. Yes, 1970 was the 200th anniversary of Beethoven's birth, and Deutsche Grammophon put out these series of records of all of Beethoven's music, and my dad bought quite a bit of it, and he would listen to it. So maybe that had an influence on me. To this day, Beethoven's my favorite composer. I even got a Beethoven bust sitting on my office a bookshelf, and then my mother-in-law, God bless her, got me a little stuffed Beethoven doll, and it sits at the very top next to the Beethoven bust, and then it's like he's looking down at me. You better keep composing.
Hey, that's
and you better don't ever stop listening to my music. And oops, sorry, I didn't mean to hit them out. Anyway, so the deal is, maybe that happened, and maybe there's people out there who have stories like that. That's great. Maybe it started beforehand, but whatever happened, when you first get into the formal education, those very first steps, guided by that music teacher, years, decades later, you have no idea the impact it will have.
It's planting the seeds.
Yes, yes. Wow. Yeah. Well, and I'll leave with this. My very first music teacher, and I'm going to give out a shout about it because he's no longer here, was Mr. Osley. And Mr. Osley was about ready to retire. In fact, he did retire like right after my 5th grade. He was there.
And where was this?
It was in Tulare, California. Mr. Osley was a World War II veteran, and we always wondered why he walked with a limp. He would kind of move unusually. And my dad told me that Mr. Osley lost his lower leg during World War II. And so we were like his very last class. And I remember Mr. Osley was very patient with us. And this man was a World War II vet, had wounded, lost his leg. And there he was in Tulare, California, teaching little kids, 5th graders, how to play. Well, I played my, trumpet, but all the kids getting them ready for band. Think about that. Yeah. And that was 50 years ago, maybe 40, almost 50 years ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a really good way to wrap this up. I don't think you can really top that. That's it's a good way to end it. Well, cool. Is there anything else you want to ask or add on?
No, that's it.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, before we go, I mean, obviously you are still an active composer and you have your recording business. So do you want to just kind of plug your different, your websites and just tell us where people can find you if they're interested in commissioning you or getting you to record anything in the area?
Well, that's nice. Yes. My website is BernieScherrComposer.com. And that's just all one. Bernie, BernieScherrComposer. Whoever composer. Yeah. BernieScherrComposer.com. That's my website. And I have some information about me. And that's where I have my web store. So, so if you go and you listen, I'm still in the process of populating it, but if you go there, you could go through, you could peruse scores, you could listen to them. I got recordings, and so you could purchase scores. You just pay through PayPal, and also too, you can get you'll find out about you'll have my contact information and that's really the main starting point is BernieScherrComposer.com.
And we could put that in the description.
Yeah, we can put that in the show notes too. I think so. People should be able to click on the link easily, and they can just go right to it.
Oh, good! I'd love that. Yeah. I mean, I'd love that.
Yeah. Do you have a separate website for your recording business, or is that more?
No, it's just basically on the home page. There's a left-hand column of all the links. Mm-hmm. Well, all I did was you'll see it there. It'll go, Bernie Scherr Orchestra, blah 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 pieces, and then near the bottom, it'll have the Composers Consortium. That's a thing that I'm involved with right now. And then below that will be B&D Music Services. Okay. And so you just click B&D Music Services and it'll explain, hey, this is all the stuff we do, and then this is how you contact us.
Cool. And y'all do recording and streaming video streaming.
Right. Yeah. So what we do, I mean, obviously, with my background, I prefer to remain in the concert music world. And so I record live events of concert music, and I could stream live events of concert music. And one of the things that I do is I can do is I could go remote. So all I need is electricity and my encoder. I could stream wirelessly. Or I prefer like a wired and unwired connection. But the idea is I stream, I record, and so I prefer concert music.
Cool. Well, if so, we're in Abilene. So if you are, a director of an ensemble and you're in the Abilene area, or I guess kind of West Texas, Central. I don't know how far you're willing to travel, but that kind of area of Texas, you know where to find Dr. Scherr. He's a really powerful asset to Abilene, I think, in many different ways. So we're so glad that you're here and that you're able to come on the show with us for a little bit. It's been great.
It's been awesome.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye.
Dr. Bernard Scherr, everybody. Yeah, man. He knows a lot of stuff.
Yep. Just a little anecdote really quick. There'd be times in music theory sophomore year where we'd be going over post-tonal stuff, and I had no idea what we were talking about. Half the class didn't really know what we were talking about.
That's fair.
Dr. Scherr would look at us and be like, "Come on, guys, this is easy." Like, no.
He's probably the only guy, at least in Abilene, that looks at post-tonal theory and is like, "Oh, come on, y'all. It's nothing."
Yeah.
Well, Kara, tell us some things that you feel like you got out of that conversation.
Well, this year, and I said this earlier, that it's been a little hard to find a balance between teaching music theory and doing everything else I'm supposed to do in the class. And basically just implementing those little teachable moments into the rehearsal, whether that be notational things or visuals, and how your warm-up time is a great time to talk about music theory. And your warm-up isn't just warming up your voice, it's warming up what you're about to get into in about 20 minutes in the class. So
yeah, and the importance of explaining to your students why you're doing those warm-ups. And I'm not saying none of my teachers ever did this. I probably just wasn't paying attention, but I know that that's something that would really helps me when a teacher says, "We're doing this warm-up because it helps you do this in this section of the music." And it's like, oh
yeah.
So
it makes everything kind of have a reason. And I know my students have appreciated that, or like they've found the connection. They have that kind of like that light bulb moment, like, oh, that's why we did that,
Yeah. And there's like, some people say it's better to focus. So like for me personally, what we talked about that really helped me was whenever he said it's really good to have a diverse amount of experiences. A lot of people say, especially like in regards to business and stuff, it's really good to focus on one thing because you become really, really good at it. And that is true even for stuff like this. But with a subject like music, there is so much crossover between different subjects and areas that looking at different things to study and practice is going to exponentially help all those other things as well. So it's kind of cool how all those different things kind of relate to one another. So but yeah, so just to recap the things, I just thought we'd recap here at the end. The three main things that Dr. Scherr talked about how you can work on integrating music theory into the classroom. We thought those were especially good that we wanted to recap here. Number one, 3 key steps. The number one is you really want to point out just those notational things, kind of like Kara just mentioned, and help the students visualize them. He mentioned you got to have a staff on the whiteboard so that you can draw the stuff on there, or at very least have like a projector where you can easily like put up circle something on the music or something like that.
And also something else, if you're teaching basic note names, I always use a hand staff. So I tell my students to bring out their hand, and your hand is like the perfect representation of a musical staff, because you have 5 fingers, and in between those 5 fingers you have 4 spaces, and it's right there.
Yep.
Living on them.
Yep. That's awesome. So that's number 1, notation, and plus, making sure they are able to visualize that. I myself, I should also add, I'm a huge visual learner. So if someone just tells me something, I'm not going to remember, but if they can illustrate it for me, like in a picture, or they give me something to kind of put it in some sort of visual form, that's going to help me so much more. So that's really, really important. The next thing, number 2, is the importance of the warm-ups and how they are integrated into what you are doing in the music. And again, illustrating to your students how those warm-ups are helping with the music. We just kind of talked about that a second ago, so don't really need to go in depth with that. And then finally, number 3 is having your students sing or play the parts, depending on which ensemble they're in. So if they're in an instrumental ensemble, have them sing it. And if they're in choir, have them play it. Give them assignments to go and play their part, or at least a certain section. Maybe you could, I'm just thinking, maybe if you're a teacher, you have your students submit a recording of themselves, plunking out, 8 measures into their voice memos and emailing it to you or something like that, just to know that that they've been able to look at that and kind of make that connection from what they're singing onto the piano. So but yeah, really, really good things to be taken into account here. Kara, is there anything else you want to add before we go?
Nope.
As always, if you're enjoying the podcast so far, we would love for you to leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. If you could do that, we'd greatly appreciate it. That'll help us grow quickly and therefore bring on even better guests. So again, if you could leave us a rating, that would be greatly appreciated. Alrighty, well, thank y'all so much for joining us for this episode of Beyond the Measure. We will see y'all next week, next Monday. New episode uploads at midnight. See you later.